Morning.
Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to this 8th session of our Focus Talk series. I'm Adeline Blanchard, responsible for visual arts at Institut Français, and Focus is a program by Institut Français inviting curators and institutions directors twice a year to come to France to discover the French art scene. This year, due to the pandemic, we decided to do a series of talks online. And today I'm very happy to welcome Zineb Sedira, artist representing France at the 59th Venice Biennale. Hi, Zineb.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
So you are in conversation today with your three curators from the French pavilion. So first of all, Yasmina Reggad, curator in Brussels. Hi, Yasmina.
Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today so early.
Thank you. And also Sam Bardaouil and Fellrath, both curators based in Munich. Hello.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, before starting the talk, I will introduce, everyone knows Zineb Sedira, but a brief introduction also on the curators, and then I will pass on the word to Yasmina. So first of all, the French pavilion is jointly commissioned by the Institut Français, also by the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, and also by the French Ministry of Culture. So a jury has chosen the artist. Bless you.
Sorry.
No, nobody's sick. So this jury is composed of Charlotte Lobach, who is a professor at Head Art School in Geneva. Also Naomi Beckwith, who's the senior curator at Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. Hélène Guenin, director of du Musée d'Art Moderne et Contemporain in Nice. Rebecca Lamarche-Vadel, who's the director of the Foundation Lafayette Anticipation, Morad Montazimi, curator in Paris, and Yves Robert, director of the Biennales in Lyon. So in France, as you know, or maybe not know, so the artist is chosen by a jury, and then the artist chooses its curators. And so, Zineb, you are a leading voice of your generation. You were born in France of an Algerian family, and you have been instrumental in expanding the discourse within contemporary artistic practices by exploring alternative histories of colonialism and contested historical narratives, as well as addressing in your work questions of collective memory and heritage. Since the beginning of your career, you have elaborated a polyphonic vocabulary that embraces autobiographical narration, fiction, and documentary genres. So you are represented by Galerie Kamel Menour in Paris, and also by the Third Line in Dubai. So your education, so you studied at the Royal College of Art, London, then also Slade School of Art and Central St. Martin's School, all in London. And you have been nominated for the Marcel Duchamp Prize, and most recently for another prize, but I'm not supposed to say which prize. You will discover that very soon. In your past exhibitions, so the most, among the most recent ones we can mention, there was last year the Jeux de Paume in Paris, also Institut Valencia, Art Moderne in Spain, National Galleries of Scotland in Edinburgh, Beirut Art Center, Lebanon, Sharjah Art Foundation Art Spaces, Art on the Underground, London, VCU Key Gallery in Doha, Qatar, Tamor Grain Gallery in New York, and Palais de Tokyo in Paris. I mean, there are many more for group exhibitions, Tate Britain, Red Brick Art Museum in Shanghai, Whitechapel Gallery, London, Centre Pompidou, Tate Modern, Mucem in Marseille, and so on and so on. There are so many places you've been exhibiting. So I carry on with Yasmina, because you, Zineb, you co-founded ARIA, Artist Residency in Algiers, together with Yasmina Reggad. And this is a platform that has hosted international artists, curators, and institutions in Algiers since 2012. So both of you traveled together by plane and train the 1932 Imperial Airways commercial route that linked London to Karachi for the installation Air Affairs, commissioned by Sharjah Art Foundation in 2018. And most recently, Yasmina, you accompanied the artist when she uncovered hidden sites and treasures in the archive of the Cinémathèque of Algiers in preparation of her solo show at the Jeu de Paume. And you, so Sam Bardaouil and Fellrath, you have collaborated with Zineb on several projects over the past decade, including the commission of a large-scale two-channel video and sculptural installation, The End of the Road, for the opening of Mataf, the Arab Museum of Modern Art in Doha, and also for an exhibition at Gwangju Museum of Art in South Korea, and for her first solo exhibition in New York at Tamor Grain Gallery. And so, yeah, so that was it for this introduction. Yasmina, I will pass you on the word to start this conversation with Zineb. Then we will carry on with Till and Sam for the second part of the conversation. If you have questions at any time, you can write in the chat, I have a question, and I will pass you on the word. So thank you very much.
Merci.
Merci.
Yeah, thank you, Adeline, for this this introduction, and welcome everyone. So, if Joséphine, we could have the first slide, please. So, so what we're gonna do? Maybe I explain a bit how we're gonna proceed, as we cannot speak. We are a team of four, 3 curators, and working with Zineb, the artist Zineb Sedira. I think we decided on Zoom, so we don't speak on top of one another, to have to choose each a body of work or specific works that touches us, or that is important to us as curator, or as a person, or individually, or in relation to our relationship with Zineb. So for myself, I chose standing here wondering which way to go, which is an installation, a large scale actually installation that was commissioned and presented last year at the Jeu de Paume as part of the exhibition L'espace d'un instant. Sorry, I don't remember how it was translated in English. Zineb, maybe you can.
No, on the top of my head. No.
Okay, so can we pass the first image? So this also, it's very interesting installation for all of us. This is the living room of Zineb in London that was transported to Paris. And this living room actually is very special, because all of us, Zineb, Till, and Sam, and myself, had dinner in this. So we also had a life in this living room when Till and Sam were visiting London. I don't remember when was this dinner, but but before we visit this installation, I would like to revisit other work that I really feel that are linked to or prepared the ground for Zineb to present this large-scale installation. So first we will go to, can we change slide please? We will go to La Maison de ma Mère, the house, my mother's house, that was created in 2002. I think this is a photography, correct me Zineb if I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, it's a photographic installation. It's composed of 12 prints. You present it all together, right, on one wall. So that was an early work by Zineb, presenting a view, an intimate view on what could be or what will be the dwelling or the place of her mother. Can we move to the next, please? And then not long ago, in 2016, Zineb created this two-screen installation called The Land of My Father, Les Terres de Mon Père, that was commissioned by Mussem and presenting there. Zineb, you tell me if you want to say something specific about this work, if you would like to. And then, so for me, I feel that this, and then next slide, please. And then we go back to 2002 mother tongue. So this is not, of course, a chronological genealogy for me, but they all are linked, even though they were not created in this series. But I feel this works, and mother tongue, that is, I think, extremely important in your career, and that has been seen in so many institutions and by so many people throughout the world. So I do feel that they kind of they constitute a constellation and a genealogy, that they go together in your quest in looking at your personal history and your family history, and that includes including your daughters. I mean, your daughter in this case. So can we go back to can we go, sorry, next? And this, knowing this work, I think looking at this work, they help us understand how you reach the creation of Standing Here Wondering Which Way to Go. So looking at first at the language, all sorts of dwelling of the land, the language, the passing of the language throughout your family. I believe this led you to now be able to look at your own affinities, your own accomplices in your own history. Now you went, would you think this is right?
Yeah. I mean, this is definitively a culmination of a whole body of work, and almost, I would say, almost at perhaps 85–90% work which kind of looked at the family or the autobiographical or the personal, always somewhere connected to my parents' history or mine. And I think in the case of the Jeu de Paume piece, the Standing Here Wondering Which Way to Go, for me it was really almost the extreme of the autobiographical in my work, because here I am actually sharing my living room, my private space, and you, Tina and Sam, have been there because we are friends, but to have that suddenly to share an intimate space with photos of my families, with personal objects, books that I read, it's really sharing an extremely personal space with a much bigger audience, because here we are, I'm not just sharing with friends and family, but I'm sharing with everyone. Of course, it's important to not forget that although the personal is very, very much present, this is connected to much larger and wider and more collective issues. And in the case of the living room, I was really exploring the Pan-African Festival of Algiers of 1969, And as I was working and looking at a lot of archival material around the Pan-African Festival of 1969 and what it meant to politically to be in that kind of 1960s decade, which was for me a decade where there was a kind of very strong political consciousness, not just around the anti-colonial movement, anti-imperialist movement, but many, many other movements. I also realized while I was working there that actually I'm born in the 60s, and although in 69 I was still a child, I realized that unconsciously or consciously, I've for now a good 30, 40 years, have carried on collecting objects from the 60s. So I am somebody who goes to flea markets a lot, who buys a lot on eBay, who adores and really appreciate and see a lot of values on object, paintings, books, furniture from the 1960s.
Sorry, just I interrupt just to say that can we move on to enter in the next slides are entering so we can visit and have, okay. Sorry.
So as I was then researching and working on the Pan-African Festival and the 1960s in general, I kind of realized that around me, I was surrounded by a lot of objects that also had some kind of connection to Africa and North Africa, because within this love for collecting objects from the 60s, of course, I am very interested in buying objects that connect to my own identity, which in my case would be the African, or, you know, to go even wider, the Middle Eastern perhaps identity. But of course also, I mean, you have a lamp from the 1950s, which is Spanish. You know, a lot of the furniture is from British designers. So you have the G-Plan, the Hercule, who are well-known 1960s British designers. So I was really interested that within my own living room, I had Algeria there, Sub-Saharan Africa, I had Egypt through the Egyptian posters, I had some French 1950s, 60s posters, film posters. I had a lot of objects and elements from my British identity since I live in London, some of it even based from Brixton, because a lot of the flea market and places I buy from is in Brixton. And yeah, so it made sense in some ways that within that story of the 1960s and the anti-colonial and anti-imperialist kind of movements, in fact, my living room was representing all that. Through also my studies, you know, in London, my strong emphasis in being interested in the Black Art movement and the post-colonial studies. So I had a lot, my library almost was filled with books from, you know, when I was a student, and all those books were, you know, connected to this kind of post-colonial history or colonial history. So it made sense for me to show my living room. And because the Pan-African Festival obviously was a space created by Algeria to host cultural activity, whether it was music, dance, film, etc., etc. But it was really a space of solidarity and of sharing. You know, the whole African continent, but not only, was invited to Algeria. And so my living room in some ways become that kind of festival space, that kind of hosting hospitality space.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that you feel it was very intimate, like what you said that from the beginning, that for you to show your living room, it was probably the most intimate work you did. It's interesting that also for me it's also related. Why I showed the other work is also that I think you appeared yourself, you put yourself on Adeline, you are present there. In many other work, you appear there. In mother tongue, there's even your family. I think it's the intimate of the language, the intimacy of the language, of the heart as well, of the family properties, say, or the parents' property. And you move to something that to me is intimate politically there. That is another kind of these are political affinities, political solidarities. And I understand that when you say yes, the living room performed already in real life these encounters of people from all over, not only in the walls, within the books, within your choice or intuitive choices that belong to the 60s. And, but also all the people, they're still there, kind of, we could feel still the ghost of your guests, the people who came from all around the world who were hosted, that it is, we can understand that it's also, what you bring is also a way of life, a way of living. Actually, one of the pieces, I know it's called The Way of Life. And, yes, that's true. So I really like that, that part. And can we, for instance, would you like to speak in details of certain objects
what we mustn't forget to say that the installation of the living room is part of a wider, big installation, and like the first title mentioned it in 4 scenes. So the installation equals standing here wondering which way to go in 4 scenes, and there is within that 4 scenes, so there is a film which is called mise en scène that you haven't shown in the slide.
Yes, it's not here.
Yeah, which is a small 8 minutes film of many bits of film footage that I found in Algeria in a flea market. With the canister, and there was a lot of bits of film. Some of the films were super damaged, so there is no image, or there is image, but the image is super abstracted. And other bits of film where you see actually some images, and you might not recognize some films. A lot of the bits of the film are definitely all come out from film from the 1960s, which is anti-colonial, yeah. I believe there is a film from Poland also in there, a small bit. So what I did, I kind of stitched all those films together, I scanned them all, and then put them together and created a film called Mise en Scène. Then there is a second part, the second scene, which is Way of Life, which is a living room. A third scene, which is called, now I've got to remember the title.
Can you go through yeah. No, it's before.
The World Was on Fire.
Yes, this one.
Okay, for a brief moment, The World Was on Fire is the installation of the photo montage. So I created, because I spent so much time in Algiers and in France and in England, looking at the archive, and there is so much around the Pan-African Festival, that I decided to make some photo montage collages, if you want, accompanied with objects, because for each of them, they're on a shelf, and with each of the photo montage, there is some object. So although it's a kind of a 2-dimensional project, it has also a lot of bits that I find in flea markets or books or whatever. And the third one called We Have Come Back, it's installation of records, vinyls. I've got a huge collection in my place in London of vinyls, and I do listen still to vinyls. But for me, it was important because there was a big movement also in the 60s of music, which was called musique protestataire or militant music. And then I made a big installation on the wall with all those vinyls. But of course, during the Pan-African Festival, there was a lot of music played. And I was lucky to find through dealers a lot of the vinyls that came out in the 60s with Algerian music or African music played at the time. And obviously the most well-known one and more easy to find is the Nina Simone, the Mariam Makeba, the Archie Shepp, and all those kind of African-American musicians that came to Algeria. More difficult are more the Sub-Saharan or the North African musician that came in '69. I was lucky to be able to. So the whole project is also about collecting, and yeah, it's also about collecting, like collecting the archive, collecting objects. It's something that I do every day in my life when I go to the flea market and I buy myself some 1960s clothes or objects that I put in my living room. So yeah, I think it's very important to say that the archive or the object as a signifier of a certain period is very important. And I believe that some of the 1960s vases I've got, for example, in my living room could be part of an archive because they really tell a story about a certain type of design, notably in the 60s, where you could see that Africa had a very strong influence in a lot of designers, European designers, yeah? So I think on this idea also.
So, and the installation itself, like, it's good that you remind that it goes in 4 scenes, all the vocabulary around, all the aesthetics, and the protocol you use remind either, I mean, a film, cinema, theater, either, and also music. The title itself, it's borrowed from a song. It's the title of a song, Standing Here and Wondering way to go. So it's really interesting also the mise en scène you do yourself. You used a mise en scène, all these collecting and all these objects for me are kind of finally footages that compose all these 4 scenes. To use the cinema vocabulary, and we see the walls, the way you designed as well all this. You decided on the decor, on the settings of the and having this installation. If we could go back just to the first image, so we could see that what is visible, like again the mise en abîme. The first we can see here, you brought the walls and used also some devices or tricks of the cinema with the diorama, the wall. We think that most of the objects are there, but they are not. Can we go to the
yes? So well, I mean, really, it's a photographic installation when you think about it, because the walls have been photographed as they were in my living room. With all the objects, the posters, the shelves, or whatever. And then if we can go to another one of the living room.
Can we go back to the later? Yes. No, later, after, to the details. Yes.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah. For example, so you have photos of the living room, but in front or on the top of the photographic installation, I've also added some elements. So here you have in the photography, the photos of the plants, but in the space itself, I added plant also. So there is a kind of a mise en abîme or a play with fiction and documentation.
And also creation of new archival material, layers and layers of different meanings of what could be a document or an archive or an object that is collected. Can we continue show more images? So here we can see, I mean, there's a there's the object is there. There's one of the object that is 2 actually on the right image.
For example, in this one with the elephant is quite interesting because you have the photographs with the elephant in the back, and then in the front you have the same elephants but with books.
Yes. So there's a lot of details. Can we move? Do you want maybe we got to the end of.
Yes,
Adeline?
Thank you very much, Yasmina. This is very interesting to have this first conversation going through the artistic world of Zineb. It gives a better understanding of all the references. So from her origins from Algeria, going to France, to London, to her living room, and having the impression to go into her intimate sphere, but also to all the artistic references in music, film, theater. So that gives us a very good introduction. So if anyone has got a question at the moment, so you can feel free to ask, or you can write it directly on the chat, or you can show a hand, and so we'll be happy to pass you on the word. And so if there are no more questions yet, I mean, you can ask, you can interrupt at any time. Don't be shy. So we will carry on with Sam until, so for the second conversation, thank you very much, Sam, until.
Hello, you want to start to ask a question?
You can start.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to welcome everybody also here from Munich. Hope everyone is keeping well. Perhaps before Sam is going to go a bit more specifically into some projects that we had a close connection with Zineb when we were working together, I wanted to ask Zineb a question, actually. I think what really characterizes your artistic practice at large, I think, is a wonderful blurring, in a sense, of your personal biography. You know, as we heard, you're well, most people know, you were born to an Algerian family in France, but you've been living in London for many years. We also know that you spent a lot of time as a child in Belgium, you know, with a Catholic priest, which was quite a very formative period for you at that time. So you have so many cultures in you in a certain sense. And I think at the same time, you have a wonderful human personal touch in many of your works. Many of your works are spiked by a personal encounter, by a person that you meet, by a very, very human story. But at the same time, I think you are also very careful of never really, you know, being on a side in a sense, or you really find a great way of blurring and putting all things into your work, you know, like as in a sort of bridge, even though that may sound a bit cliche, but I think you are really able to connect with people no matter where they come from. And perhaps you can maybe talk us a little bit about what are your strategies in that, or how do you manage, in a sense, to weave all those complicated things that make up you as a person into the projects?
Well, I think very simply, I need to be touched by something, by a story, an object, a person. Often it's a person, but not only. And then once that happened, because it really comes from a kind of very personal and human encounter, I developed my project around that. And for me, I always believe if you talked, it was very important when talking about politics that you talk about the personal. So for me, the personal and the politic was always entangled. And for me, a piece becomes very successful for me when the personal is there, and perhaps has almost as much space as a political. So for me, as soon as I'm touched by a story, I know it's gonna work somehow. It's gonna kind of open a path to an interesting subject or a space to kind of explore. And yeah, the human aspects, the talking, the listening, you know, I mean, as you know, a lot of my work is to do with oral history, but it's me telling the stories via videos or making art, but it's also listening. So I love listening to people, whether they are telling me the stories. So, and from listening that way, I hope I'm becoming a better teller, you know. So I don't know if I responded to your question, but it's pretty much it.
Yeah. I think to pick up on the conversation, I think what you said something when you were in conversation with Yasmina now, you said something about working with objects and archives as signifiers of more expansive realities or things that are more complex. And I think it's on this focus that you bring onto the objects that become the subject of your work, whether the object is a person, whether the object is a museum display, whether it's a shipwreck. The way you weave these things into context that then become signifiers of something larger, departing from the personal to become something more universal in a sense, is what we personally find extremely enticing about your work, and has always been something that we love teasing out and working with. Perhaps what we find most exciting about Zineb is how she manages to always conjure the surviving traces of a number of very controversial histories, but to kind of reveal how they still haunt our present realities. In a way, she's always uncovering the persistent remains of several historical and current struggles that straddle a number of geographies. And these geographies are not only referring to a place. A geography could be the household, you know, or the family. It could be an abstract place that lives in the imagination. Geography could be the realm of publication when you work with comics, for instance. So it's very interesting how you take all these different areas, all these different so-called topographies, and starting from something that is very current, you kind of delve into all these layers to dig up all these controversial histories to kind of make us understand where do our perceptions of what is happening now come from, and how do certain injustices perhaps still function in the way we deal with each other. I'm going to ask you to the permission to share the screen, if that's possible. And I think I can, yes. And what I would like to do is perhaps bring, here we go. Okay, sorry. for some reason, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open. Okay, here we go. So let me just do this very quickly. Okay.
Technology.
Is it fine, Sam, or do you want us to share it through?
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to find where. Here I am. No, 1 second. Okay. Sorry.
Yes. No?
I'm trying to see where you all went. Somehow you can. Yeah, but I can't find the.
This is the same you wanted to share previously, yeah?
If you reduce the window, you cannot share it. So make sure it's still on.
Ah, here we are. Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen. Okay, share.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for your patience. So what I'm going to do, and given the fact that we don't have too much time, I'm actually here going to view
window.
Yeah, I'm just removing this. Okay. I want to focus on one particular image and read a very short text that goes with this image, which Till and I kind of wrote when we did, when we worked on Zineb's first show in New York, first solo show at the Taimur Grani Gallery. It was back in 2015, I think. And at the moment, we were very interested in looking at different works, specifically a body of work that she did in 2013, 2014. And the image that we're looking at is from a work called Museum of Traces 2, where Zineb actually was on a research trip in Algeria, and she pictured a small museum of the lighthouse of Cap Caxin, which is in Algeria. And this is an image of one of the displays. And I'd like to read a short text for you that corresponds to this image. In a staging that evokes all the recognizable means of visual display of the ever-persevering 19th century natural history museum, a corroded cogwheel that is covered in dust stares at you while it lies, tired and redundant, within a neatly orchestrated setting. This image comes from Museum of Traces 2, a photographic series that explores a number of similar objects that belong to several lighthouses from when Algeria was still under French colonial rule. Back then, the depicted cogwheel used to engage another similarly toothed device, propelling into motion a much larger contraption, of which it only played a small yet indispensable part. Disjointed from the mechanical apparatus to which it once proudly belonged, it has become obsolete, providing neither speed nor direction. Instead, it grapples, not without a certain amount of suffering, with its new job description of inanimate museological relic. As we continue our journey through this image, we soon realize that the cogwheel is not the only object to have met such an ill-fated destiny. To its right, the partial contours of a lamp can be identified. Equally coerced into this choir of signification, it has been forced to go against the natural order of things that has been eternally followed by all lamps in all places and at all times. Instead of emanating light from within, thus providing clarity of vision to everyone who falls within its reach, it now requires that light actually falls on its muted surface in order for you to discern its presence. The harsh irony of fate. Beyond the cogwheel and the lamp, the metaphor of inertia that permeates this image spills into yet another object. In the background, you can distinguish the lower right corner of a map. Perhaps the most unfortunate in its plight, it hangs lifelessly on the wall, a reminder of the cartographic document that it used to be in a previous life. During these long gone days, it used to feel alive, rolled, unrolled, and positioned in various directions by navigators straddling north, south, east, and west. Now it lies flat in the most counterintuitive of ways, longing to be useful again. And I think we just felt like reading this short text to illustrate how many emotions and this conflation of past and present that Zineb manages to bring out in every object that becomes the subject of her exploration, of her interest. So when I started talking about the conflation of past and present, this image is a very good example of how the departure point is always today. This display that exists in this, remnant of a museum that is so hard trying to tell a story about the past, but the past is still haunting us and trying to kind of frame how we understand where we have arrived and what we are doing. In a sense, this is not very different from the presentation at the Jeu de Paume, I think, because by bringing all these objects and bringing all these personal archives and materials, it is telling us something about how Zineb lives today, about her as a person, about her own story, but also the objects tell stories that are very, very conflicted and very contested and come from so many different backgrounds. And this leads me to the next point, the images that I'm going to show you now, which is actually the work that we commissioned Zineb for the opening of Mathaf in 2010. So this was 3-4 years before she worked in Museum of Traces, but you can see how certain issues and certain questions still come back. And in this case, instead of looking at archaeological or ancient broken machines, she's looking at cars. And the cars, when she speaks about them, are the metaphor of the failure of globalization, in a sense. I'm going to read a quote that comes with this work. When Zineb speaks about the work, she says, "The death of these modes of transportation is a symbol for the rupture, disorientation, loss of points of reference and fragmentation experienced when traveling, a physical disaster associated with the existentialist idea of drifting with all its socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental implications." And I think when we look at these images, it's very clear what's going on. I'm going to show you quickly. I'll go into the film. It's a 2-channel video that basically, here we go. And the film continues to show us different angles of this kind of scrapyard where all these, broken vehicles of connectivity, in a sense, have completely lost their function in a little way similar to the cogwheel that we saw in the Museum of Traces in a work from 3 years later. And the film also has a part where there's a narration by Zineb over the images that we see.
How will we go? Maybe we will be left waiting to see.
I would have liked to show you more, but obviously we're running out of time. So I just want to quickly continue to say how this was the other part of the work. It consisted of, it's called Dead End. It's kind of a series of light boxes that were kind of installed in a way that replicates the feeling of being in a scrapyard. Each photo is very engaging and very harsh and aggressive in its own way. But as you see, it connects to work just from a year before with the light boxes, Zineb's signature light boxes. This is Shattered Carcasses and Architecture of the Forsaken from 2009. But then if we go back a year earlier, we look at this work, you know, this iconic piece from Zineb, The Lovers, which is coming out from a body of work that she did when she was traveling on the Mauritanian coast. This is from Nouadhibou, one of West Africa's most famous scrapyards of boats and ships. And it's also a place where there are daily departures of young Africans to Europe. So again, the continuation of a line, objects, geographies, situations that deal with histories that still kind of shape our present reality. But what's fascinating is that the emphasis is always on what does this mean for us today? How are we grappling with these realities today? It's important to understand the past, but it's more important to be able to figure out a very active response that allows us a certain agency to grapple in a more active and effective manner with very important issues. And the personal is always there, as we were saying earlier, but it always opens up to other very, very important questions. And this is the last image that I want to show. It also comes from that body of work in 2013, 2014, the sugar silos. That was a very interesting photographic departure also for Zineb in terms of the form, in terms of the formal approach and the style. And what's interesting here is these are actually the sugar warehouses in Marseille of a place where, you know, it's called Saint Louis Sucre Refinery in Marseille, where sugar was being, you know, brought from Cuba, Madagascar, Mauritius, Zambia, Brazil, Burkina Faso, Antilles. It was all being, you know, put together, packaged, and then distributed globally, which is a very interesting metaphor for the complete loss of identity, which again brings back the question of globalization and whether it truly connects or whether it does so at the expense of celebrating locality versus globality, which connects with Death, you know, End of the Road, the film that we developed with Zineb or commissioned Zineb to do for the opening of Mathaf. So I'm going to stop sharing and maybe finish with just a quick question for Zineb. Zineb, as we said, we're always excited about the way you manage to weave all these layers, whether it's starting from the very, very personal, the geography of the family, opening it up to trade routes and immigration routes across the entire, you know, globe. Today, given all the work that you've done until this point, can you give us a little bit, where is your heart at the moment? What are you interested in the most? What are you thinking of in terms of next projects? And it doesn't have to be, you know, the work for the Biennale, but just kind of where is your heart now, and how are you building on what you have done until this moment, and how do you see it coming into something in a new chapter perhaps? Thank you.
I think, I guess it will be continuing exploring some of the ideas and issues around the Jeu de Paume piece. I think, you know, this era of the 1960s, and perhaps, you know, certain element of it, which in my case would be the cinema. I'm very interested in kind of looking at how the cinema was developed all over the world during that time, and that kind of the idea of making cinema that became a militant tool to fight or to express some political ideas. That's where more or less I am in. And it's not just the 60s, obviously it goes up to the 70s, 80s too. So yeah, so it's kind of really strongly connected to the Jeu de Paume, but it's focusing more on cinema.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how the work over the years, when you look at the work, is becoming more and more spatial, three-dimensional. It's growing bigger and bigger in a sense, but becoming more and more focused on certain specific moments, key moments, instead of taking a theme. At least this is an interpretation. It focuses on a moment, a festival, a cinematheque, a particular film, and how you know, it was received in different places, but then it's exploding in a sense and being explored in so many different formal ways that come together to create an immersive spatial environment. And we're very happy to be joining you on this journey with Yasmina. I think it's an honor and it's a delight to see your mind at work. And yeah, we just wanted to share a few of our own responses and the points of attraction that we have to your work and to you. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much.
Maybe can I just add something, just because now I saw, just to link actually what you said about, that I found very interesting about looking at the past from today. And also to add up to the Zineb's answer of where she's at now, and what I feel strongly through the installation at Jeu de Paume is actually what I felt is it's through the history of the 60s, the militant history of the 60s and the 70s, that is actually invisible, it's been invisibilized in the global history. It is a time of utopias. It is a time of developing new ways, third ways. And I feel strongly that from this point, your work look at the future. It is from the past looking very much throughout the future towards the future, a future from the past at that moment that has been overlooked or ignored, and this I think it's a very important turn in the work, looking at cinema or music at the time that was avant-garde, that is still avant-garde today. So it's a way for me to look at the future, another future, other possible future from that were I mean devised or conceived in the past. Okay, so that's the only thing.
Thank you, Yasmina. We have one question from Maria Rava-Jova from Bach, Netherlands.
Thank you so very much for the presentation. It's fantastic work. I've been intrigued for many years, but there is one particular element I've been intrigued by throughout this presentation, and that's Zineb, that you invited 3 curators to work with you, and thus my question would relate to the methodology. Is it going to be militant collective work, or are you dividing the space in like this is this curatorial take, this is this curatorial take? But whatever you can reveal at this point, I'd be very interested to understand how you envision this working together.
From the outset, when I knew I had to choose my curators, I knew I wanted to work within a collective kind of mode, and within a family mode. I mean, for me, the family, as you've understood now, is very important. It was also important that I surround myself with such a big task by friends that I respect, that I find intellectually challenging, that I know how, in terms of curating, I've done some really good projects. So not only, I mean, they were friends and we could have a good laugh and a good glass of wine every now and then, but there was also the fact that, I mean, I really respect Sam and Yasmina intellectually. And so for me, the choice was very easy. It's more the logistic, because 3 curators seems to be a bit like, a bit complicated, and the question why, but purely because for me it was important to recreate this kind of notion of family and sharing. And I really believe that Yasmina and Sam complement each other on different aspects. For example, Yasmina was probably much more about the Algerian history and some of the subject that I've dealt, and also we've created ARIA, that's a residency project in Algeria. So with Yasmina, there is also, but Yasmina is also somebody I can call at 10 p.m. in the evening if I'm stuck with something, because there is this friendship too. And the same with students. They might not know less, they might know less about Algeria, but they will know more about other things. And again, there are people that, we do text each other sometime at the weekend and things like that. So for me, because of the hugeness of the task, it was very important that I feel very at ease with my curators or the curators, and actually I've called them my lovely curators. That's the way we text each other now. So yes, this idea of humanity and intimacy, and you know, now you understood, Till and Sam have been to my place, Yasmina also, they know my children, they almost know my parents, you know. So yeah, so it's kind of a family affair, really. That's the way
maybe to add one more point is, you know, we've also known Yasmina for a very, very long time. You know, she's also a wonderful artist herself. And so I think it doesn't come at all as a sort of an alien construct. You know, it really, we all know each other. And, you know, we've already been working much longer than, in fact, it had been publicly announced on this project. So for the past, like, I think at least 6 months already, you know, we've shared a lot of meetings. We were in Venice together. So I think it's very much what Zineb was saying, almost a family affair, you know, of friends coming together and supporting Zineb, which is really, for the three of us, the most important thing is to create a certain safe space. You know, she has a diverse range of personalities, experiences to bounce ideas with, and we brainstorm together. So I think really maybe more that idea, because I think the Venice Pavilion, in a sense, is maybe not the same as curating a group show or other things. You know, in the end, it is one project, but it is one very, very personal project, and one project that is very prominent and that will go very much in depth. And I think to create that, I think it, you know, takes a long time of reflection, brainstorming, coming up with very, very diverse references. And I think in that sense, you know, so far it's been, I think, been working extremely well. And yeah, we're all super excited. We love talking to each other. We love seeing each other, and we miss each other when we don't see each other. So, and we.
Can I just add one thing about Yasmina? The other aspect, of course, that interested me is Yasmina over the last 5-6 years, I've really kind of started performing and using performance in her own art, and in some ways has become an artist. And so for me, it was also important, not only she was a curator, but she's also an artist. And because it seems that my work is going towards that direction of performing, not that I will be performing myself, but it has a component.
Who knows?
Who knows, I might. Who knows, sorry, yes, I might just take it. But so for me, it was important to have also this element of performance, and Yasmina has an amazing performance on the radios, the Algerian radio of the 60s, you know, that, you know, really compelled me. So in that sense, I find, you know, those three very complementary, you know, approaches, and also in just the way they see the world, you know, very, very different, but very agreeable, you know, if it makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, having started working with you guys a little bit, so we can feel this synergy between the four of you, and this intellectual but also friendship synergy that is really important for you, Zineb, as a support, to your work. And I wanted maybe to ask a little bit, because I know, I mean, these are the premises now from the pavilion, and but as you are working on researches, maybe you could tell in what direction you are researching. Just
I'm just at the moment spending a lot of time in archives, in the places I can access, because obviously due to the COVID-19, it's very, very difficult now to move around. And a lot of my work is about traveling, and notably to Algeria, which I can't do at the moment, but not only. And when I can, I do. When I can access archives, I do. And I will stop there, because otherwise you'll know what my interest for the future. But yeah, it's at the moment it's purely meeting people, talking to people, and looking at archival material, as I've done for the Jeu de Paume piece, for example. And there is tons of stuff, but there are stuff I need to physically access. It's not things that I can really truly find online. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we are about to finish this talk, and I wanted maybe to know more about your upcoming projects for 2021. So
okay, what's interesting is that the Jeu de Paume piece is traveling to a lot of countries. Obviously, because it's one living room, it can only go to one place at a time. But what I'm trying to do now, because the demand is quite high and in different directions, America, France, Sweden, Portugal, etc., etc. So I'm trying to create another version of the living room. But what I do for each country is that living room goes to, let's say it's America, then I push the focus on America. So in the case of my project, we'll be perhaps pushing the civil rights movement in Algeria. If it goes to Sweden, I mean, Scandinavia has also strong history with anti-colonial movements. So when it goes to Sweden, I develop or add. So it's a piece which is growing and changing each time it's going to a new country. When it's going to the Gulbenkian in Lisbon, again, I'm pushing the kind of anti-colonial kind of Portuguese, you know, side of things. So I'm trying to also add books and music from that country about the subject. And that's very, very exciting because obviously, I mean, I still, you know, collect and go to flea markets. And ideally, I go to the flea market in the country. For example, when I'm going to go to Lisbon, I'm going to do the flea market in Lisbon and buy object from there. The same with America. When I'm going to go to Arizona, I'm going to go to the flea market and buy object from there. So that's what I'm trying to do. So it doesn't take me a huge amount of time and space, but it's very exciting and fun.
You know, Zineb, at the end of all these presentations, you will have to buy a much bigger, like a mansion, and have the Swedish living room, the Portuguese living room, you know, the American living room. I mean, it's important. It's very important.
Yeah, I think
I can come and visit, and each one stays in one of these living rooms. I mean,
don't worry, I'm buying a castle in France,
perfect,
so
perfect.
affordable.
Thank you so much to all of you. So we are coming to the end of this talk. Thank you, Zineb. Thank you, Yasmina. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Till. So you will be able to listen to this talk again for replay on the website of the Institut Français so next week. And so, yeah, we have another talk coming at 11:30 with Marcel Duchamp Prize nominees. Alice Anderson
Duchamp?
Prize nominees.
Ah, I thought
channeling Duchamp through Zoom. Duchamp will be there.
So thank you to all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.